You deserved everything you got. This is a union city.
That is a Philadelphia tradition.
Seize the means of podcasting.
Oh, God, the boss has crushed us.
Let me tell you one thing else.
In oldie-timey times.
The pleasure of the flesh is in solidarity.
We will not raw dog reality for that one.
It's going to be wholly unprofessional.
The Scab Buster.
What have we become?
Eight together strong. Let that be your mantra.
Hello, and welcome to the Labor John podcast, where we exit the birth canal into the labor history of Philadelphia and the surrounding world. My name is Sam James. I'm the MC of this podcast, and I'm joined by...
I'm Gabe Christie, and I'm very uncomfortable with how this podcast is starting.
When are you never uncomfortable with how this podcast begins?
It's a very good point. Do you have an announcement to make with that opening?
No. What? No.
Okay. Okay.
There is a new addition to the Labor John family, and coincidentally enough, this character has the same initials as Labor John.
Oh,
and
true.
I guess my wife had a bit of a Labor John of her own a few weeks ago, Baker's dozen days ago, and entered the world Miss Lucy James.
Yay!
My pride and joy.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you, Gabe.
Another proud worker to carry on the struggle.
And today, speaking of exiting the birth canal, and today we're going to learn about...
to jump into something a lot less happy.
You got me built up. Just knock me down.
So, surprisingly... 2022 isn't the first time that prices have gone up.
Really?
I know. It's amazing. So we're going to look into the 1917 sugar strike and the South Philadelphia food riots that happened at the same time.
Okay.
So I guess for people that are familiar with modern day Philadelphia... before Route 9 or I-95 destroyed a bunch of historically black and working class houses.
Well, I-95 didn't literally destroy these houses.
It did.
It was not like a transformer. It didn't come alive and just destroy these homes.
I'm fairly certain that's exactly how the dig happened.
All right.
So, but yeah, so before they built 95, especially the riverfront side of South Philly was like all industrial, and then once you got in about a block or two, you had the neighborhoods that mostly still exist right now or today.
Okay, yeah.
And around Reed and Delaware Ave, there were 3 sugar refineries.
Okay.
That were all like right next to each other.
All right.
So, and they employed about 5,000 people in total.
Significant.
Yeah. Between all 3 of them. So, in January, or at the end of January 1917, about 5,000 of those employees decided that they were going to go on strike.
Why?
They wanted a raise of 5 cents an hour.
Oh.
Yeah. They were currently making 25 cents an hour, which was, if I remember correctly, it was like $5.60
in today's money.
Money, and they were asking for like a $1 raise.
Okay.
So not
a lot of money.
No.
God, that's crazy though. I remember when I first started working, over the table, I got paid $8.
Yeah.
That is freaking crazy.
Yep. The actual buying power of workers' wages hasn't really changed that much.
Well, I wasn't refining sugar too.
Yeah.
I was just like stocking shelves,
Yeah. And this was apparently, a lot of this work was considered skilled labor, which was interesting.
Oh, okay.
It was a mix. There were both skilled and unskilled workers there. But So the strike was at the Franklin Sugar Refinery, which was also known as Spreckles.
Spreckles?
The Spreckles Sugar Refinery.
Why am I not surprised?
Yep. There's also the McCann Sugar Refinery and the Pennsylvania Sugar Refinery, which also had a molasses plant.
Okay.
And in addition to making...
The molasses plant went on strike very slowly.
Yes. Just kind of slowly eased out the door.
Strike.
So they, in addition to only making about 25 cents an hour, they were working between 11 and 14-hour days. So not terribly great working conditions. You were also, like, sugar refining is also actually pretty nasty. So the other fun part of this that ties into the inflation...
The last fun part of this episode.
That ties into the inflation here is that while they had actually, like, put together a decent little strike fund...
Okay.
That was before all of the inflation happened.
Oh.
So the money they had saved was not going very far. So...
I love how inflation works.
Yeah, it's really good. Then, to make everything worse, while the workers in all of the plants had organized a strike, they weren't affiliated with any larger international or union.
Okay.
So it was just the three plants, the workers in those three plants independently. So that meant that they only had each other to rely on. And once their funds ran out, that was it.
This is going great.
Yeah. So, but despite all of that, they held their line. And in the beginning, there weren't any, or none of them broke rank. So the companies all tried to keep up their profits, of course. And they kept complaining about these horrid strikers that were denying everyone sugar.
Oh, yeah. And this is America.
Yeah.
Which side are you on, strikers?
So most of the information I got from all of this came from the Philadelphia Inquirer, because I couldn't find a lot of other people writing about it. There was one, the Philly History blog had one article about it. But so most of the information I pulled was from the newspaper reports. And I should also note some bias in this, that while they were reporting on the strike at the Franklin Sugar, if you go like 3 pages down on the Inquirer, there was a full-page ad for Franklin Sugar. So maybe not the most unbiased source.
You sure you want to continue with this game?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I trust your sources.
A bunch of chocolate factories in southeastern PA started to shut down production because they couldn't get sugar. Then smaller chocolatiers in the city were also running out of sugar. They kept trying to import sugar from New York, but the supply chains were all stretched too thin, so there physically wasn't enough sugar available to meet demand. So there was one account that there was only, I think it was 200, or they were saying there were only 200 barrels of sugar in the whole city.
Really?
After 2 weeks on strike.
I've never seen a barrel of sugar.
That's apparently how it used to be shipped. So the skilled trades in the refinery were the coopers and the bag makers.
Okay.
And so the coopers were making the sugar barrels, and then
the bag makers were
making the smaller individual bags.
Okay.
That you would sell to a customer. Which it's weird to think about the storage production happening in the factory with everything else, but
why doesn't the bag maker get a cooler name? Barrel guy gets to be a cooper.
Yeah, Coopers came first.
I guess that's just the breaks.
Yep.
This isn't another barrel versus bags episode, is it? Gabe?
No, we're not going into that.
I'm not doing that again, man.
So
We don't need any more Jerry Seinfeld impressions. From this.
No. So they also brought in a bunch of strikebreakers, as they tend to do. And because this was 1917, at the beginning of the Great Migration, most of these were black workers from the South who...
Oh, this is gonna go great, Gabe.
Who were brought up north, or who migrated up north in search of jobs, and they were told that there was plenty of work in all of these northern cities.
I was just waiting for my Labor John bingo card to come up with racism.
Yeah. So a lot of these jobs were basically to be forced into the worst jobs in the city, or to be strikebreakers. And unfortunately, I didn't find any evidence of the strikebreakers being brought into the strike or brought into the union. It seems like there was no interaction at all between the workers on strike and the strikebreakers, because every mention of interaction between them is the strikebreakers being carted in and out of the factories in armored trucks.
Okay.
Because the company immediately hired the
police.
The police and a private detective agency.
Oh, God.
So they basically turned the factories into a fortress.
Yep. Bingo.
Yeah. So the workers in the plant were mostly European immigrants. From what I can tell, they were mostly Polish and Lithuanian. And so the bosses were betting on the workers being too racist to open up the ranks to black workers.
Wow, Gabe.
That'll come up in part 2 of this. We'll piss off even more people. So now, I should also mention that this wasn't happening in a bubble. And Philly in 1917 had a lot of different unions, all organizing in different trades. And aside from all of the AFL affiliate, the American Federation of Labor affiliated trade unions, you also had the industrial workers of the world, organizing industrial unions.
This story was getting a little wobbly. I was wondering if it was going to come back. Okay.
And looks like the IWW were the first to actually take any interest in the sugar workers.
Those little scamps.
Yeah. So by February 17th, the Industrial Worker, which was the IWW's newspaper, or is actually still being printed, reported that about 1,500 sugar workers had joined the Wobblies. So it's like about a third. So, which is also kind of crazy to think that the strike had only been going on for 3 weeks. So they organized 1,500 workers in 3 weeks.
That was pretty quick.
Yeah.
I can't even organize a barbecue for my 2 friends. By the way, Gabe, are you free next Saturday?
Yes, actually.
All right. Now to track down another friend.
And now I can't back out of it because you have it on recording. So now, so in mid-February 1917,
we're only 1 month in?
Oh, yeah. We're only 3 weeks in.
Well, that's about 1 month.
Yeah. The Wobblies pledged their full support to the strike and started putting out calls for donations. And the Marine Transport Workers Industrial Union, which was Ben Fletcher's union, who we'll talk about at some point, because he's pretty awesome and very important. They refused to unload or work on any shipments of sugar.
Okay.
So they're getting them from both sides.
Yeah.
It looks like they were probably using trains like they were getting shipments into probably Wilmington or something and then shipping them north on trains.
Okay.
But they weren't unloading any sugar ships in Philadelphia.
Okay.
Because especially at this point, the Wobblies basically ran the docks in Philly. So
I wish it was still like that.
yeah, I know. So by mid-February, so at this point, the strike had grown from just 5,000 sugar workers to include 1,500 dock workers and 100 seamen on the river. So like pilot boat or workers on pilot boats and whatnot and tugs wouldn't work on any or wouldn't work on their boat if they were bringing in a sugar ship.
How many seamen work on a tug?
Anyway, depends on how big of a tug.
Yeah, you said this was going to be the depressing episode. I had to pull my weight, man.
There you go. We were pulling a lot here. So sugar workers in New York and New Jersey also joined the strike in solidarity to prevent the sugar barons from just ramping up production
Sugar
elsewhere.
Barons.
Yeah.
That sounds like the villain on a 90s cereal commercial.
I think the Wobblies need to set up a cooperatively run cereal company. And I don't know who their mascot will be. Some version of the industrial worker, presumably.
Put Sabotabby.
Oh, yeah.
Sabotabby.
And then the Sabotabby has to fight the sugar baron, who tries to steal all of the sugar from the good children.
I like this.
Mostly through direct action. And she's a big fan of Elizabeth Gurley Flynn's writings on industrial sabotage.
Wow, Gabe, you're really going deep with this cereal lore, man.
I think so. We need to make this we'll call up the IWW headquarters and get this to happen. I think this needs to happen.
We got to trademark the shit out of this.
Yeah. So we've been talking about the strike and what all of the men have been doing.
Okay.
But there's a whole other side to this story.
The happy side of the story.
So the women were also struggling during all of this. So basically the wives and families of the striking workers had been trying to feed themselves and each other with whatever money they had saved. Or whatever they could get donated or had lying around.
What they had lying around.
Yeah.
This is so sad.
These working class families had lots of money just sitting around the house. So then...
What do they have lying around in 1917? What is even in their pantries? Just
so most of their
barrel of sugar.
Yes. Most of their complaints are about the price of fish, onions, and potatoes.
Fish, onions, and potatoes. Okay.
So probably lots of onions and potatoes sitting around the house. Or there were before the prices tripled.
Oh, okay.
And then there weren't.
But then there were no food in there.
Yep. And also, so I should also say I was having trouble figuring out the more specific ethnicity of the strikers, because the food riots and a lot of the women involved in the story were all reported as being Yiddish-speaking women.
Okay.
But they were also supposed to be the wives of the workers. But the workers all seemed to speak Polish and Lithuanian as their primary language, as opposed to Yiddish.
Oh.
So I'm a little...
Some wives are getting around.
Yeah.
What is happening in this story, Gabe?
So that was one thing that confused me. But
Gabe,
more importantly,
no more blogs, buddy. No more.
No, this is all
blogs.
from the Inquirer,
Oh God.
the wholly
Yes.
unbiased source.
Yes, the sugar company's branded newspaper.
Yes.
Next, we're gonna do a episode on Amazon
Yeah.
with our reports from the Washington Post.
Exactly. So this also ties into a little bit of Jewish food history.
Oh, of course it does, Gabe. Of course this does.
So there's a dish called gefilte fish.
Ah, I know gefilte fish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Rush Hour. I think Rush Hour 2 was it?
probably
Gefilte fish. I'm sorry.
So the gefilte fish is basically you take like minced carp or salmon or whitefish,
Okay.
and you mix that in, usually with a little bit of flour and some spices. And then the traditional way of doing that is you actually sew it back into the skin of the fish. And then you boil that on a bed of onions and potatoes.
And then you throw it away.
And then you eat all of that.
Okay.
And supposedly it's actually pretty good if you make it the traditional way, not the gray matter blobs that come in a can from Manischewitz.
You eat the skin?
No, you probably cut that open.
Oh, okay.
You might fry the skin as like a little snack.
Okay.
Because you don't want to waste protein.
Oh, well, I mean, I do in that instance.
Yeah.
But, pass on the protein.
Yeah.
It's more like content to me.
Yeah. So that was there were a couple reports from, this was the Daily Evening News, because that was the one other paper that actually talked about this, because there were only two papers in Philly. So the Daily Evening News talked about the prices of gefilte fish ingredients going up. And I'm kicking myself now because I realized I should have looked up some of the Yiddish newspapers in Philly, because they probably would have had more specific information about all of this.
Yeah, Gabe.
Oh, well. Next
Shame.
time, we'll do an episode entirely in Yiddish that you won't be able to respond to at all.
Watch me.
So then, so there was the prices of gefilte fish ingredients were going up, and everyone was freaking out. And on February 19th, the women of the Lower East Side in New York, or Lower East Side of Manhattan up in New York City, began a protest on the high price of food, because it wasn't just happening in Philly. It was all across the East Coast. Food prices were shooting up. So they went out into the streets and demanded bread, were crying out that their children were starving because they can't afford all of these high prices.
Oh dear, your children appear to be starving. Oh, let me get right on this.
I've tried not being poor.
Less avocado toast, I see.
So those women marched down to New York City Hall and started to demand concessions from the mayor. That didn't.
But he was at a baseball game.
He wasn't. The mayor of Philadelphia was on vacation in Florida.
Okay.
So
Yeah, all right, he's down in spring training. Okay.
yeah, probably at a baseball game. So the New York women had organized a food strike where they refused to buy food from any vendors unless they charged the rates that they were willing to pay. They decided to organize a vendor strike. The women in South Philly heard about this and decided to organize their own. They called it a vendor strike rather than a food strike. I don't know why they had to be specific about it, but they did.
It's Philly. We just had anything to be different from New York.
Yeah. So then on February 21st, about 200 women met at the Lithuanian Hall that was at Moyamensing and Christian Street. And then another 100 met at around 4th and Wharton.
Okay.
And one of the really neat things that I actually enjoyed about the Inquirer's reporting is that they gave the addresses for everything.
really?
so you can like track
Oh,
these
yeah,
movements. It's pretty neat. So initially, the police had assumed that these women were going to march up to City Hall, like the women in New York did. But instead, they so first they stayed in the Lithuanian Hall, and listened to speakers go up and talk, and they heard each other's stories, and basically got riled up and pretty angry. There are some reports that there was IWW agitation here, but it's entirely likely, but I haven't found any hard evidence of it, and the industrial worker didn't say anything about it.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they're going to say that.
Yeah.
Like we were poking these ladies with sharp pencils.
Yeah. So Florence Shaddle of 110 Wharton Street.
They have her address in there.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Insisted that the strike was driving the families of the locked out men to the verge of starvation. So she urged those gathered to adopt militant methods to drive out the strike breakers. Yep.
It comes to that point where the ladies' auxiliary comes in and shit actually gets done.
Yeah. So at about 5 p.m., a group of women, not all 200 that were there, it seems to have been about like 40 to start, marched out of the Lithuanian Hall with their children, either on their hips or walking behind them. And they marched out towards the sugar plants.
So they know where the real power is.
Yeah. So as they passed ladder company number 46, which is the old brick firehouse near the South Philly exit to 95.
Okay.
Near the AMC Theater. I used to live in South Philly, so, and I'm saying that to our listeners, not to you, because you knew that. But the old brick firehouse there, that's ladder 46, which is now a Firehouse Subs, because that's how it goes. But the...
As in they sell submarine sandwiches?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Wow. In Philly, they're calling it subs? Wow.
It's a chain.
Wow, you don't know shit about this place.
Yeah.
It's like people who use the word John to try to get,
I know.
people on board about Philly and all that. They think they're one of us, I mean, people, they say John.
At least we're not putting up billboards saying we're John Morgan.
Oh, man.
I
I'll have
hate
to
that.
beep that out.
I know. So as they went past ladder 46, there were cops on horseback there, just kind of watching them. And apparently they traded insults with them.
With the cops or the horses?
The cops.
Oh, okay. That would have been very interesting.
Yeah. Well, this was some of the weird reporting that came out of the Inquirer, and I don't know quite what to think of it. Supposedly they were all carrying or some of them were armed with pepper mills. So like pepper grinders. Mm-hmm. And they threw red pepper at the cops and the horses.
Oh.
Which it could be sort of a pepper spray almost.
Yeah.
Like if it gets in your eyes, that would suck.
Yeah, but I mean that's very interesting.
It's just a weird thing to do.
Yes.
And it's also unclear as to whether or not they grabbed them for use as like clubs, or grabbed the pepper grinders for use as clubs, or if it was specifically to grind red pepper to throw at cops. Which,
I mean,
it was just a weird thing.
Purpose riot weapon. I like that. That's pretty good.
But also
talk to
like
the police union, because that's actually a pretty good idea, Gabe.
Yeah. So
do you think if the horses went on strike, do you think they would read the works of Trotsky?
Nay.
I don't think anybody ever told that joke before. That's pretty good.
Yeah,
actually.
no, I like that.
Needs a better setup, but I'll work on it.
So the crowd of women continued to grow, and the police got reinforcements. Because after the violent assault of the red pepper, they needed reinforcements. They were getting overwhelmed.
I could just see like a waiter at a fancy restaurant just coming over, just tell me when, officer.
It grew. So eventually there were about 2,000 protesters, because more women came and a lot of the strikers showed up. And then there were about 250 cops. So the women and the striking workers all began singing labor songs. And
Nice.
others were basically calling out that their children were starving.
That hasn't worked so far, guys.
Yeah. And others just hurled insults at the police there.
And pepper flakes.
So as the tension grew, the police took cover inside of one of their patrol trucks. And the Inquirer reported that strikers opened fire on the police. I'm not sure how much I believe that. It's entirely possible, but...
It was just pepper again.
Yeah. I'm going to take the Inquirer with a big old grain of salt.
Grain of pepper.
Or
a grain of sugar.
Yeah, a grain of sugar. A grain of Franklin sugar. The finest quality. So the protesters started throwing stones and bricks at the police truck. Or at the police trucks. Apparently there had been a building demolished nearby, so there were a huge pile of bricks just sitting there, which is perfect.
How convenient.
Yeah. So the police responded to that by drawing their pistols and charging forward. And they fired multiple volleys into this crowd of men, women, and children. And that was how they handled that situation.
Insert joke here?
No.
Question mark?
Yeah. There were also apparently snipers up on the rooftops.
What?
I can't...
Fuck is going on?
I can't... So I think the snipers... Because they were near one of the sugar factories, or sugar refineries. I think the snipers were...
snipers?
Yeah, they were the private detectives.
Oh my god.
Because they had said that there were 200 private detectives that were heavily armed. And I think that's who were firing into the crowd. And they were also apparently just firing indiscriminately, hitting both cops and protesters.
Oh, okay.
So,
well,
I'm assuming they weren't police because they were shooting cops occasionally, but they probably weren't protesters either because they were shooting protesters. So I think they were just like some probably terrified Pinkertons that were just shooting at everything. So eventually the police stopped just shooting people and took their clubs out.
Oh.
And just waded into the crowd and basically hit anything in front of them.
God.
There were a lot of the women were very badly beaten. The Inquirer didn't really report on any of the strikers that were hit. So the Inquirer's reporting on this is really weird. Sometimes they would be like, well, these strikers are just ruining it and they're making it difficult for us to get sugar and I want to buy chocolate. And then other parts, they're like, oh yeah, these cops just went in and smashed the heads of all of these women and children. And you'd see like one day would be one story and then the next day would be the other. So I didn't look to see who are the authors, which I should have checked. Because might have been like a couple authors that were sympathetic.
Yeah, we could have called them up and kind of got figured it out. Get down to the...
I'm sure they're still alive. Because they've been eating Franklin sugar.
Get your barrels today, half price.
So after 2 hours of
2 hours?
Yep.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So that was 2 hours of starting with like the labor songs and the insults.
Okay. It
And
wasn't just
then
2 hours of them beating the shit out of women with clubs?
Presumably not. I think that was probably like the last 45 minutes or so.
45 minutes? Jesus God almighty.
It was a big fight. So the
Man.
after the crowd thinned, there was one body discovered. It was a protester who was shot through the heart.
Ooh.
I think his name is pronounced Markionis Petkus. I have seen at least 6 different spellings of this name.
That would be pretty insulting of you to mispronounce his name.
Well, this is how it was spelled in the Industrial Worker. So I'm assuming that was the most correct spelling.
Okay.
Because he was a striking sugar worker and had just signed his red card like a week before.
Oh, wow.
So he was a very fresh wobbly.
Not anymore.
No. So he had bent down to pick up a brick, and then the police shot him square in his chest. His body...
Wait a minute, they shot him in the chest while he was bent over?
Yeah, interesting reporting from the Inquirer.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
that's what
I'm going to
they
need
said.
like the police forensics on this, actually.
Their forensics was he was a dirty wobbly, and we're going to throw his body in the river if you don't bury it first. So his remains were brought to Mount Sinai Hospital, and he was unfortunately pronounced dead on arrival.
Yeah, because they brought his remains to the hospital.
So
you don't bring someone's remains to a hospital and be like, hey, he's doing pretty good, actually.
clean bill of health.
Visiting hours are over at 7 o'clock and someone have to take a leave.
So a lot of the other wounded had made their way up to Mount Sinai, but they eventually just overwhelmed the staff. So they had to turn people away and send them up to the Pennsylvania hospital instead. So because there were 2,000 people, probably all of whom were injured to a certain extent. But out of all of this, there was only one arrest made, who was Florence Shalda. I realized I misspelled her name originally. Who was that of 110 Wharton Street. Who was the one...
Oh, man. Can't believe you're doxing her like that.
Yeah.
She's going to get swatted.
Well, she was already arrested. But she was the one who urged them to adopt militant methods to drive out the strikebreakers.
Well, I mean, she's the only one who was arrested, but I mean, she got off pretty easy considering there was like 2,000 other people who got shot. I mean,
Yeah, that's fair.
You're like, we need one person who needs to get arrested. Oh, me? I'll do it. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so that is part 1 of all of this. And that was the first food riot of 1917.
Part 2. Sugar strikes back. Big Sugar strikes back.
There you go. So...
All right. Give me some sugar, Gabe. Give me some sugar.
Yeah. So we covered how the strike started last episode, with 5,000 workers walking out of the 3 different sugar refineries.
Yes.
And then we also talked about how both that and the food strike and riots and boycott is probably the better term for it, turned into a violent riot on February 21st, 1917.
And what a lovely riot it was.
Oh, yes. So both the strike and the food boycott continued. So we're going to try and cover both of that, but we're going to split it up because it turns into 2 pretty separate stories. So we're first going to cover the women and the food boycott, or the vendor boycott, and then we're going to cover the strike.
Okay.
So,
all right. I think I took my antidepressant medicine about an hour ago. Should be kicking in just about now, Gabe.
There
Come on,
you
let's
go.
go, bud.
Yeah.
And my antipsychotics apparently are still lost in the mail.
Yep.
So it's gonna be a fun one.
Yeah. So the food boycott, like I had said, was spurred on by reports from New York City of the food boycotts there, where the women had marched on City Hall on February 20th. What I didn't mention in the last episode is that after they marched on City Hall, they stormed all of the street peddlers and food vendors.
Okay.
And basically overturned all of their carts and kind of attacked them in protest of the exorbitant prices.
Oh, okay. Were they making prices high?
It's unclear.
Is it like top down? Everybody's doing it, right? So I mean, like, because they're buying it off their suppliers, which is exuberant price, so they have to put up their prices in a way, right? So
it was probably some misdirected anger. I didn't have time to dive into where all of it started. I know there were reports of basically relief trains coming from the Midwest to bring food supplies in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
If Kansas is sending you aid, that is bad. You fucked up. All right, so we're beating the shit out of a bunch of small business owners.
Yeah. So it wasn't.
Imagine going on the Broad Street and beating the
moment.
shit out of the guy in the pretzel cart.
I mean, that's kind of what was happening. I would say it's more so like going and beating up a bodega owner.
Oh, wow. That is so much better, Gabe.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's better. It's just slightly different. Because it's more of a grocer than the street vendors. Or imagine going to the Italian market down in South Philly and just rampaging.
Okay.
That's effectively what this looked like.
Well, Frank Rizzo stares down at you.
Oh, God. I thought they covered him up.
They did cover that up, actually. Yeah. They put up Jimmy Rizzo now.
There was actually very popular petition to get it replaced with Gritty.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Imagine Frank Rizzo going down and Gritty going up.
Yep. Anyway, so getting back on track.
Gabe, I'm trying to dismantle.
There were two approaches that were suggested because after that riot on the 21st, the women in South Philly were trying to figure out what do we do next?
Don't get shot.
Yeah, that's part one.
Okay.
Don't get shot. Okay, but then while you're not being shot, there's other stuff you should do.
Don't pepper spray horses.
Well, they were pepper tossing?
Oh, pepper tossing.
Pepper tossing horses.
That's where they were all
along. One of the suggestions came from Mrs. Hugh F. Monroe.
Okay.
Who is a very wealthy philanthropist from up in Kensington.
You did not need to say that.
Yes. And she wrote a letter asking that the mayor return from his vacation in Florida. And in the hopes that he would jump into action to help resolve the issue and bring relief to the women of South Philadelphia. She was very explicit that the women of Kensington did not wish to resort to such violent means as the women of South Philadelphia had.
I don't know. They got on that pretty quickly, though.
Yeah.
All they needed was just a little spark, and they were throwing rocks and pepper at police horses.
Yeah, I mean, don't
messing with police horses is like a Philly tradition, though.
It is. It has been a long-running thing.
They were about to start climbing up greased gaslight poles, too.
So then the women in South Philly had a slightly more direct solution, which was to violently attack street vendors.
They couldn't just wrote a letter.
Yeah. So the same night that Miss Monroe wrote that letter, a group of Jewish women stormed the street vendors at 7th and Morris, yelling, "Robbery, it is robbery," at the increased cost of fish and onions.
No.
It's a legitimate grievance, but I disagree with their tactics, because they should be attacking the capitalists, not the
right.
petty bourgeoisie. So they... but then on the other hand, you can make the argument that the small business owners should have shown more solidarity with them and recognized the common enemy. But anyway, they did douse one butcher shop in kerosene, reportedly.
Well, I like my steak well done.
It was a little intense. Then, after that fun outing during the day, they met in the synagogue at 6th and Siegel Street, which is now the Prophetic Church of Christ.
Okay. I think it was like a Wendy's or something.
No. There's a tradition in Philly of all of the working class Jewish neighborhoods. The synagogues are all still standing, but they're now all evangelical churches.
Yay.
I mean, it's basically the working class Jewish neighborhood got replaced with a working class Christian neighborhood.
Well, yeah.
So
It's all bullshit, Gabe.
Yeah. At the synagogue at 6th and Siegel Street, Pauline Goldberg, who was one of the organizers, declared that if we have potatoes and onions and a little barley, we can do without meat forever. But with potatoes at 7 cents a pound, where they used to be 2 and 3, and onions at 16 cents a pound, when they used to be 5 and 6, we cannot live. Our children and husbands are not getting enough to eat, and it is up to us to do something. So then they organized a vendor boycott to basically say they're not buying food until they lower prices.
Yeah. Okay.
They planned to boycott food vendors, but were explicit that they did not wish to make it, or to take the more violent tactic of the women in New York.
Okay.
They had already kind of done that during the day.
Yeah.
But they decided to not do that
Let's
anymore.
take a step back.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they made plans to extend their boycott outside of their immediate neighborhood, and would send envoys and agitators around the city to get other women in other neighborhoods to continue the boycott.
Okay.
So then, unfortunately, that peaceful approach didn't last very long, because the next day, the riots stirred up again.
Oh.
But it's a little weird because the riots were unplanned, but they actually achieved some goals, because they got the attention of the city and state government, and it wasn't just the police coming down on them, though the police certainly did come down and smash heads, as they are wont to do. And again, only one arrest was made.
Cops and their quotas.
Yeah. On February 22nd, 1917, Sarah Schlitzer was charged with highway robbery.
What?
Uh-huh.
What?
She was charged with highway robbery because she snatched the chicken out of the hands of another woman's arms during the riot. That was the only arrest.
I didn't realize this was happening in 1674.
Yeah, it was a weird one.
I wonder what the legal requirements of a highway robbery is. You actually have to be on a highway?
I have no idea. Which, like, it might have, like, happened on Broad Street or something, which probably counted as a highway. But it was weird.
This is the weirdest thing.
Yeah. Again, this was reported in the Inquirer. Maybe don't trust it. But the riots actually did get the attention of city government, who then made a plea to state government. State government launched a probe into the rising food prices and tried to determine ways to help lower the cost.
Okay.
That never seemed to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's hard to tell if food prices actually lowered, or if the U.S. entering World War I just kind of sucked all of the energy out of the boycott and protests.
Huh. That would do it.
Yep.
But they launched a probe. Why didn't it work?
Yeah.
They launched a 1917 probe.
They set up a committee to discuss the possibility of further committees to discuss the possibility of probes.
On horseback.
But we are now going to talk about the strike that was also going on.
Part two of part two. Okay.
Yeah, so we're going to get back into the strike of the South Philly sugar refineries. On the same day that, so February 22nd, on the same day that there were, their women, or the wives were out pouring kerosene on butcher shops.
They're also women. They're not just wives, Gabe.
That's true.
Wow, buddy, it's kind of misogynistic of you to say that.
So yeah, while the women of South Philly were out demanding food, the striking workers of South Philly, or the striking sugar refiners of South Philly, had their own battle to fight, and there was reportedly a small skirmish while 500 scabs were being transported out of the factory, or out of the refinery. This is also all according to the Philadelphia Inquirer.
I understand that, Gabe.
So take it with a big
You
grain
have
of
lost
salt.
all credibility
I
at
know.
the beginning of the last episode, so...
So, according to them, striking workers opened fire from behind some freight cars at Washington and Delaware Ave.
Okay.
And so what was happening was because the sugar refineries had hired 200 private detectives, who were all heavily armed, as I had said.
The sugar snipers.
The sugar snipers, and had basically fortified all of their factories. The strikers couldn't protest or couldn't picket out front of the refineries themselves. Yeah. So they couldn't prevent scabs from getting in. So they had to go like 2 blocks north to Washington and Delaware and would try and intercept the armored trucks that were transporting the scabs in and out of the factory. The police responded by charging them on horseback. And there was a small skirmish between about 1,500 strikers, it seems, and over 100 cops.
Oh.
So the cops basically were just fighting and delaying action to get the trucks out of the area. Yeah. So then they retreated, went back to the trucks. But there were reports of other shots being taken at them at Front in Washington. But they never found who fired at them. So
at who, the rioters or the cops?
At the cops, yeah.
Oh.
So it sounds like someone like took a pot shot at them from an alley and then ran away. But they never figured out who that was. Oh, I should also point out that all of the accounts of like skirmishes between the cops and rioters are basically only using accounts from the cops. So they didn't interview any of the strikers, surprisingly.
All right.
So
believe every word you hear from here on out.
Yes. Their description of where these events happened is probably accurate.
Uh-huh.
Their depiction of how they started might not
If
be.
there's anything that 1917 Philadelphia Inquirer gets right, it is the addresses of all of these events.
They were really thorough. And it made it interesting to realize that, like, South Philly was a war zone.
I'm putting this in my mind, and that's the first thing I thought of.
Yeah. There were then, like, 5 days of quiet, which was surprising, until Tuesday, February 27th. They finally held a funeral for... kind of pick up his name again, because there were 6 different spellings.
Is this the guy who got shot in the heart who bent down to pick up a rock?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Markionis Petkos. Who is... The Inquirer reported his name as Martinus Petkos.
Okay.
Which is probably not correct.
Shot through the heart, but who's to blame, Gabe? Who's to blame?
Probably the cops. They shot him. They could have just not done that. So...
I didn't tell you this, but Bon Jovi's going to license their song for this episode.
So his funeral was held on the 27th, and it was attended by over 1,000 of his friends, fellow workers, and family members.
Well, rub it in, bud.
The police were pretty on edge during that funeral. So, I mean, clearly you just have to get shot by the cops.
It was a funeral. Why are you on edge?
They assumed...
Cops.
Yeah. So they assumed that the funeral would lead to more violence.
Oh, no.
They were also... there was also a rumor that seems to have, like, the cops seem to have convinced themselves that all of the strikers were going to come to the picket line armed the next day. Which, there's no basis for that, but they all convinced themselves of it.
Convenient for you to think that.
Yeah. So in response to that,
in response to their made-up imaginary thought,
Yeah. They enforced a loitering ban. So basically, if you were like...
You can't exist.
Yeah. If you were standing on Delaware Avenue, they could arrest you.
Wow.
Is what it came down to. But February...
What are rights?
Yeah.
What are rights?
No. Freedom of assembly isn't important. But on February 28th, nothing happened. And it was a very calm day.
But they imagined something happened.
Yeah.
It was horrific.
So, at this point, the strike had been going on for a little bit over a month.
And there wasn't much progress.
Yeah, there wasn't much progress. The company was still able to make some profit by bringing in strike breakers. And again, they were using Southern black workers to prevent any solidarity.
Well, they're giving poor black workers work.
Yeah.
You gotta look on the upside of this, buddy.
I'm sure.
They're job creators.
Yes.
They create jobs.
Very benevolent of them. So, and then in addition to that, the high cost of food hadn't been resolved, despite the government's probe into why there were high prices.
Okay.
So the families of the strikers weren't doing great, and folks were like actually getting close to facing starvation.
Wow, they should go on more food strikes.
Yeah. I'm not sure about the efficacy of those tactics.
Boycott more food. That'll work.
So on February 28th, or might have been the 29th, actually.
They went on a
it was
hunger
hard
strike.
to tell. No, unfortunately, 200 Polish sugar workers returned to work. It's
sad.
It seems that there were the more militant and radical and also wobbly aligned workers were mostly Lithuanian. And the Polish workers broke rank with them. And that it all seems to have started as the result of a fight that broke out at the Lithuanian Hall the night before. Because the strikers, there had been a union meeting to discuss the plan forward for the strike. The Polish workers had demanded that the strike be ended because their families were starving and they wanted to return to work. Which is fair. Feeding your family is important.
Yeah.
And they didn't seem to be making any progress. The Lithuanian workers rejected that and argued that they should continue the strike as they still hadn't won any concessions.
Yeah.
It's unclear what actually went down at that meeting. But one report said that a fight broke out between the two groups of immigrants, and the Poles walked out of the union, which brought the whole thing down. So, I will say, the rector of the Lithuanian church in South Philly pleaded with the bosses to allow the men to return to work. The company said that they had let them return to work at their original wages. Mm-hmm. So they weren't going to reduce wages.
How saintly of them.
And even allow them to organize so long as it was within their own factory union and not affiliated with the IWW. So... Yeah.
Granzo.
So... the remaining Lithuanians stayed on strike, and on March 4th, a speaker from the IWW gave a speech that was then translated into Lithuanian, Polish, and English, encouraging the men to keep up the strike. But that's the last I could find about it anywhere, so I'm assuming that shortly after that meeting, the strike ended.
How do you know it's not still going on?
It very well could be. There's probably like the great grandson of some Lithuanian sugar workers. Like, I'm still on
out
strike.
There.
The factory got knocked down in 1975, but God damn it, I'm on strike.
With a handful of pepper flakes.
Yeah. It's not the greatest moment in Philly labor history, but it was... I kind of got obsessed with it, mostly because you could follow everything so closely with the addresses.
Like the play-by-play.
Yeah. And it was also fun because it was like really only about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And just reading through the daily articles in the Inquirer. And usually it was like third or fourth column on the front page, and then continued on other pages, so you could find it pretty easily. And it was clearly like probably or it seemed to be considered pretty big news.
Yeah.
That was the like February of 1917 in South Philly. It's not the most fun time.
Yeah, I mean, like, this did not have an ending. There was no ending to this.
They just stopped reporting on it, so I don't know what actually happened. I'm assuming they lost the strike and went back to work.
I guess so.
I don't know how much the company actually stuck to the promises they made to the Lithuanian church.
Maybe maybe the Philadelphia Inquirer lost their like sugar company ad revenue or something.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, this is not worth it anymore.
They were slightly too sympathetic to the strikers. The other thing that would bear some research is what happened to the 500 black workers that they brought in as strikebreakers after the fact. Because they got like a month of probably terrible wages. And then nothing else?
We don't need a part 3 on this episode.
No, we don't. That's way too depressing.
But that was something. I like it.
Yeah.
It was all over the place. It was crazy. What a story.
Yeah.
What a story.
It's the stuff you don't learn about in school.
Hey, this is Gabe, and thanks for listening to the Labor John podcast. So for now, we live in a system called capitalism. And under this system, you have to exchange currency for goods and or services. And to that end, Sam and I put a lot of time, effort, and a fair chunk of our own money into keeping this podcast available and generally free. And if you'd like to help support us doing that, you can give us some money at patreon.com/LaborJohn. And if you choose to do so, we'll give you a fancy button every year, some cool merch, and an extra episode once a month, whenever possible, because life is hard, because capitalism. Anyway, we'd really appreciate your support if you've got a few bucks to spare. Also, if you happen to be a member of a union, and you want your fellow union members to learn about local labor history, we do commission work, like presentations, pamphlets, that kind of stuff. So if that sounds cool, you can shoot us an email at laborjohn@gmail.com or contact us through laborjohn.com or message us on social media or whatever's most convenient for you. But if that sounds interesting, feel free to reach out. And anyway, thanks for listening. Solidarity. Have fun.